Welcome back to Four Corners of the Galley. I'm your host PBO, and you're joining me on another edition of Westworld. What the bleep? We're all the way on to Season 2, Episode 6, and this is the Phase Space. So, Westworld decided to go a little different this episode. They started off with a little bit of a teaser, and then they decided to give you each timeline minus the actual current timeline that they try to trick you with. Remember, clothes and certain people, they try to trick you there, but they give you every single timeline in this episode minus the current timeline. You get Bernard, Maeve, Dolores and Teddy, and then you also get the Man in Black. So each timeline is broken down in this episode. So I'm going to give you each single timeline because they're real short in this episode, and we'll give you a little deeper dive. And before each timeline, I'm going to kind of show you exactly where everyone's at on my little timeline graph and where they end up at the end of this episode, because everyone moves, but just not that far. But everybody has moved. So it's kind of cool to see that Westworld has put a lot of movement in play, and we got everybody moving, and it seems like we're all going to be intersecting at one place, but there was some very interesting things that happened, and a giant reveal that came at the end. So I can't wait to get into it. So yeah, let's kick off into some of these fun and exciting timelines that we got going on this episode, and break down this episode for you. But before we get to those fun timelines, let's start off with the beginning scene. So the beginning scene is actually reenactment, or almost the exact same scene from the first scene of this season, where you have Arnold speaking with Dolores. Now, we don't know if this is Bernard or Arnold, but he's saying the exact same words, how he's nervous for what she's becoming, how he's excited what she's learning, and then halfway through this speech that Arnold is giving, or Bernard, we don't truly know, Dolores stops him out of nowhere and says, "No, that's not what he said. He was never questioning whether he was going to do it. He was always defined in that." He's like, "You got that wrong." And you can see now, you realize it's Bernard, and he starts to stumble, and she goes, "Sees all motor functions." And then all of a sudden Bernard stops. And then Bernard she tells Bernard to sit down, then she walks away. They don't give you any contents to this scene, but I think this is actually Bernard inside of the CPU, which we find out later, and this is him living a reenactment that's not really him. That's my opinion. I really don't know, because they don't give you any contents for what the scene is, and it just leave it open-ended and jump right into their timeline. So I guarantee we'll get an answer to what this really is at the end. I guarantee they're just playing this scene up, and at the end we'll figure out what it is. But I think he's inside of that little CPU world, with a Westworld world inside of a Westworld world, going all Rick and Morty, microverse inside of another microverse with another side of microverse, having some fun here. But we'll check it out. So let's kick it over to those timelines. Alright, so here are the timelines. So this one we're starting off with is the Man in Black timeline, as you can see from the little promo I got going on. Here's the Man in Black timeline. So here's a little quick refresher course. Also, what we're going to recap right afterwards, where everybody's at. So as you can see, the same stuff has been happening. Last time we met up with the Man in Black, he meets up with his daughter Grace. And in this episode, they have some stuff goes on, and he leaves her. So let's find out what happens. So we meet back up with the Man in Black, and he's riding along with Grace and Alonzo and his cousins. And basically, they have a humongous heart-to-heart. Well, at the start of this, Grace comes up to the Man in Black and goes, "So are you acknowledging me now?" And right now, William, the Man in Black, thinks that Ford has made a host of his daughter, and that he is using and manipulating loved ones to trick him in this game that he's playing. So he doesn't even believe this is his daughter. His daughter's like freaking out, like, "Oh my God, it's me, what's wrong with you?" Once he realizes that this is his daughter, and that they start having these real conversations about their lives and everything else, he offers her a drink. She goes, "What, you drink now?" He's like, "Well, yeah." Well, she's like, "Oh, and here you do. Well, at least you're human." And then he starts talking, and then what we also get out of this is she gives us the name to the world that we didn't have a name for, which was, the world basically made up of India, and it's called the Raj world. So I thought that was kind of cool. She kind of says it out loud, so you get to hear the name of that. So you have Shogun and Raj world, along with Westworld. And he starts talking about how she was afraid of the elephants. She's like, "No, I love the elephants. That was Mom." So you can already see right there that William has all his people confused in his head. He's so lost from reality, all he really cares about is Westworld and this world he's in, and this maze he's about to take on. So Grace this whole time is trying to convince him to come back with him and leave. So they come to an agreement where they're going to leave together and go to the shore and go free. So you're like, wow, that's actually going to happen? No way. Of course not. Why would they have that happen? So the last thing we get is Grace waking up with one of Lonzo's cousins, and they left her. They just left her behind. He doesn't want her getting hurt whatsoever, and the Man in Black doesn't want her anywhere near anything he's doing, and he just leaves her behind. So now she's left behind, and he's back on a mission again with Lonzo. We're assuming they're going to the same place, but they really don't move the action forward. That's just kind of where they stop us, and they just leave us there because there's more to come, obviously, and this was just kind of a quick glimpse into where the Man in Black is and where we're going, so that's kind of where we leave us. All right, well, now let's kick over to Bernard's timeline. All right, so in Bernard's timeline, as you can see, quick reference, last week, he met back up with Elsie, and Elsie's alive, and him and Elsie have been working together. They found that hidden room. They found where James Delios was. James Delios was, and where they were trying to recreate him. And Bernard also remembered that he's been there before, and he had taken something. So now we catch back up with Bernard and Elsie, and they end up back at Delios and going to the cradle, and then Bernard goes into some other stuff. So let's see what happens. So we catch back up with Bernard and Elsie, and they're on the walk, and they're walking down the same train tracks that we've actually seen Bernard walk before, and this is where they really mess with you. So Bernard, if you remember, was walking down these same train tracks in the future with Carl and some of the mercenaries. Now, we don't also know if that's Bernard or not, but that's the Bernard that we know of by face. So this time, in the past, which we know is actually about a week before Bernard walks in there again, thanks to Charlotte, which we'll get to later, Bernard and Elsie are walking into the Westworld main headquarters, Delios headquarters that runs all of Westworld. They go back in there, and Elsie wants to try to figure out what the heck is going on. She's automatically starts going into the system. She's trying to see all the messages, see what's going on. She sees that there is something inside of the CPU in the system that is stopping anything from happening, and this thing is communicating to everything. Basically, what Elsie has discovered. We'll get to that in a second. So, she can't access it, and he goes, "Well, you can't access it remotely. We need to go to the. We got to access it from the actual hub, which is the Cradle, which is this big server where they store all these kind of like memories and the inner workings of all these different hosts." So they go to this Cradle, and it's this giant red server room. Now, I'm going to tell you something at the end of this, so remember. So they go to this giant room, this server room, and she starts hacking in there, and Bernard's like, he realizes he's been there too. So what Elsie discovers is there's something inside of the CPU, inside of the main system, stopping everything, stopping anything from happening. It's working like almost like a virus, like it's protecting the Cradle. This system inside is affecting all of the hosts and even affecting all of the systems throughout Westworld and the entire park throughout the thing. So my guess, you could assume at this point is Bernard and Dr. Ford figured out a way to do what James Delios was trying to do this whole time, which was take his self-conscious and actually live life longer. But he realized he didn't need his body. He put the himself CPU inside of the main Cradle and could control all the hosts from there. He went the smarter route where the flesh was not needed, just his mind and what he understands and knows is all Dr. Ford needed. So he put himself inside of the Cradle. So what does Bernard do? Bernard realized he did something. So he ends up going inside of this Cradle himself. He hooks himself up to this machine, cuts out his little head, and they take out his little red ball Minority Report style, and they drop it in the CPU, and we get this great Bernard in Westworld, inside of Westworld, where he's living in a different universe where the CPUs and the host minds are still going through the Westworld system in this Cradle area. So he's like in a universe inside of another universe. He went Inception on us, but he's not dreaming. He went Rick and Morty inside of multiverses. I mean, they are really playing with the boundaries here. But what we do get is we get the big old reveal. And I'm going to say it now because it's just going to get out of the way. We find out that Ford is inside of the Cradle. He sees Ford playing the piano and gives him that sly look. And you know it. He put Ford in there. Bernard knows he put him in there, and now he's got to figure out a way to get him out. I'll get to that in a second. But now Ford is alive, and Ford is alive inside of all of the different hosts, and he is still communicating them and sending out messages and things of that nature. Now, if you remember, I'm going to show you a picture. In last week's episode, you had, oh man, I can never remember his name. You had the director of operations, Carl, there it is, Carl, and he's looking at the thing, and he sees the same cradle that Bernard and Elsie went to, only it's blown up. It's blown up. So something happens. So something big's going to happen. We don't know what happens, but I think their way of trying to solve this issue is by blowing up this cradle. So obviously there's some things, we're filling in the puzzle pieces as we move along, but that's where we leave Bernard and Elsie. He's inside of the multiverse, and he's talking to Ford, and something crazy is going to happen so they can stop all this. Now, let's move over to Maeve. Alright, so here is the Maeve storyline. So we catch up with Maeve, and it's the aftermath of the big Shogun killing all of them soldiers night after. They're still bloody, and things are all a mess. And we're still in Shogun, and at the same time, Akini is just broken. Her daughter Shakura has been murdered, and she goes over to her and starts cutting out her heart. So she cuts out her heart. You have no idea what's going on. You know, it's some old traditional stuff. You just kind of watch it. So she cuts out her heart, and they want to take her heart to Sakura's birthplace. So before they start to go on their mission, and before they leave this town, they gotta have one last duel in Shogun World. I mean, why'd you come to Shogun World and you didn't show us a samurai battle? I just think this whole Maeve story, I just don't like where it's going. I don't like anything about it, but we're gonna keep going. So they have this one last duel where you get Masui fights his old nemesis and ends up killing him and doing this whole little duel so that she doesn't. I mean, it's just weird. It's just really weird. So they end up taking the heart to this beautiful, beautiful setting and that they get of old Japan that I love. And they do a traditional ceremony. They put her heart in there. They kind of light it on fire and pray for her soul to go amongst the gods. I have no idea, honestly. I'm just guessing, so I don't want to disrespect it anyway. But they do a very traditional ceremony. And then Akina and Masui tell basically, Maeve, they're not going to go. So it's Maeve and the rest of their group back on the mission past Shogun World, and they find this little tunnel that Lee takes them to. So they go down this tunnel, they get all cleaned up, and they pop out on the other side, and they finally have gotten to where May and her daughter is. So they get to this beautiful pasture, and Maeve's excited, but she wants to go down herself. So she goes down herself and finds her daughter. And you're like, wow, but you know that there's something weird, and she's not going to go the way it's supposed to go. So, of course, the daughter doesn't know who she is, and they've actually replaced Maeve with another woman that looks just like her, and now they're saying that this is her mother. At the same time, you get these killer Native Americans. I have no idea what their actual tribe ones was, but they shoot the black arrows, and they're poisonous ones, or the deadly ones, and they come charging in like it's redo of the entire scene that Maeve freaks out about. She freaks out, grabs the daughter's screaming because she doesn't know who this lady is. They start running and try to get away. The one of the Native American catches up to him and says, "You must come with me." Now, this is where I am just confused out of my mind. I know that she's a little frantic right here, but I'm sorry. Maeve has gotten the power of, like, God now in this show, and they've given her this ultimate power. All she has to do is speak in the native tongue, which she did, and tell him to kill himself or walk away, and it's over. That's where I'm lost. I just don't get it. She just showed her power for the last episode at the beginning of this one, and then the minute she gets in trouble, she doesn't use her power. I'm confused on this whole storyline. Maeve gets her daughter, but everything is not great. They end up shooting and getting the other ones away, and they're just kind of there. I don't know. I really don't know where we're going with this. So now that she has her daughter, what's the next move? Your move, Westworld. I'm assuming you're going to show me in the next 4 episodes. So there you go, guys. That's where we leave May. She has her daughter, but everything doesn't seem great. So, okay. Let's move over to the Dolores and Teddy timeline. So in the Dolores and Teddy timeline, we meet back up with them in Sweetwater. They're in Sweetwater. Teddy's been fixed now. He's evil Teddy, and he even shows he's evil Teddy. So Dolores is in the in the bar saloon, and she's doing Dr. Ford-esque style and playing the piano and being all, just being Dolores. And Teddy's just antsy. He's a new Teddy. And he just wants to go. He wants to get out of there. He wants to take people down. He's in a hurry. And Dolores kind of taken back by this, like, ugh, like, you're a little too cold-hearted. But, I mean, this is on her. She's the one who asked for this. So they end up getting the train going. And they have the two guys there. One's a security guard and one's the one that's been helping them. Teddy just cold-blooded kills one of them. And they don't care. They get on the train. So they're on this train and they start steaming forward. I had no idea what they were doing on this train. Their plan was slick. So Teddy's still cold-hearted. He goes to the back, and the other gentleman, who's the Felix-like gentleman who has been helping out Dolores, he hands him a gun empty and one bullet and says, "For mercy," and then gets out of there. And you're like, what the heck is going on? They detach the train. What you find out is they cut the train in half. They take the first half of the train, and they drive that sucker all the way into the Delio's main head office and try to blow it up, and you hear this explosion, and it all happens simultaneously, and you have no idea what's going to happen after that, but that's all you get of Dolores and Teddy. It's just a real quick little thing. So let's kick over to a surprising little kind of get-together, which is the Charlotte storyline, which is kind of a combination mixture of Charlotte and Stubbs. So this is a little different. So we catch back up with Charlotte, and she has just taken Peter Abernathy, Dolores' father, from the big battle that happened with the Confederates and Delio. So this is still a week before we see Charlotte again. So now she's got Peter Abernathy, and Stubbs is there, and they send a communication out to this team to let them know they have it. She ends up taking Peter Abernathy down below to one of these guys, and they like nail him onto the thing. Next time we see it, these expansion guys kind of show up messing with Stubbs because, he's Ashley Stubbs, and they're messing with his name. And, they're supposed to be head of security, but this whole big disaster is happening, so they keep messing with him. That guy shows up, they go downstairs, and they're about to take Peter Abernathy, and at the same time, the train comes into the thing and blows up, and you have no idea what happens. And I think this is how Peter gets away, because remember, when we catch back up with Charlotte and Carl, they're still looking for Peter Abernathy, so they still don't know where the heck he is. So there's definitely something big that happens after this explosion. It leaves you on this cliffhanger going into Ford and showing Ford inside of the little multi-universe, but they leave you on the big cliffhanger on purpose because they know that the ramifications that happen are going to show big in the next ones. Woo! So there you go, folks. There is episode 6 of Westworld Phase Space. I'd like to thank you for joining me on this week's edition of What the Bleep Westworld. Until next time, guys. Good night.